maman avait une devise dans
Well, good morning, everybody, and welcome to a panel entitled Her Capital, Our Future, Transforming Financial Systems so Women Entrepreneurs Can Change the World. My name's Gillian Tett, and I'm absolutely delighted to be overseeing this panel for two reasons. Firstly, that I'm with the Financial Times and actually started my career in Eastern Europe, spent many years of my life there, and saw it firsthand both the opportunity and the challenges faced by women entrepreneurs in that region. But secondly, I also now oversee King's College in Cambridge, the university, and we have the first entrepreneurship laboratory out of any Oxford or Cambridge college, which is going gangbusters, and we have particularly passionate involvement both from our East European students at master's, graduate and undergraduate level, and I should say also our African students who come to us via the MasterCard Foundation. So we care passionately about entrepreneurship and finding ways to support it, and we have a terrific group of people to talk about that today. On my immediate right is Her Excellency Dr. Rania Al-Mashat, who's the EBRD Governor from Egypt and also Minister of Planning, Economic Development and International Cooperation in Egypt. Next to her is Governor Irina Radovic, who's the Governor of the Central Bank of Montenegro. Next to her is Dr. Adranik Grigoryan, who's CEO of Converse Bank in Armenia. And at the end is Barbara Rambusek, who's a Director of Gender and Economic Inclusion at EBRD. We're going to be hearing in a moment from both Ms. Celine Oz, who's Women in Business Manager at Guarantee BBVA Turkey, and also Valerie Labi, who's a female social entrepreneur representing Wahoo Mobility from Ghana. But first, I'd like to invite to the platform Ms. Odile René-Boisseau, who's the president of the EBRD, who will be saying a few words to us.
Thank you very much, and good morning, everybody. I'm very pleased to welcome you to this event today, which marks a significant priority for the bank. The EBRD is committed to investing in women entrepreneurs, and this will remain a central element of our new strategic and capital framework for the next 5 years. This strategic and capital framework is going to be endorsed, hopefully, by our governors tomorrow. But women empowerment, women in business, the role of women in the economy will be at the core of this strategy, because we are deeply convinced that women empowerment and development of human capital more broadly is a critical driver of economic growth and resilience. By opening access to finance and entrepreneurship to all, creating enabling workplaces, enabling leadership opportunities for women, we foster competitiveness and ultimately create stronger economies. Given the complexity of global challenges, we must draw on the full breadth of talent to pure innovation. Aligning with that goal, we will continue to work with our clients and partners, in particular in the private sector, to provide the right solutions through investments, policy engagement, and technical assistance. Under this lens, policy initiatives like the We Finance Code and the cooperation and involvement of both public sector institutions and the financial service providers will remain crucial. This code is a commitment by our partners to increase funding provided to women-led enterprise to allow them to grow and provide value to the economy and communities. It also improves the collection of data, which is key to measure the starting point and to measure the progress we are making on this issue. So our esteemed guest this morning will share more on the progress of the implementation of the We Finance Code and the joint efforts we are implementing. Just let me say a few words about that. Since the start of the implementation of the code in 2024, so only last year, thanks to the close support of central banks and governments and financial institutions, there have been more than 120 signatories to the code. This includes commercial banks, microfinance institutions, non-banking financial institutions, and business associations. And let me also say a word on the EBRD impact in unlocking pathways for women entrepreneurs beyond the code. So a key initiative we have developed in the last years is a Women in Business program. And I'm very proud to say that this Women in Business program has cumulatively disbursed over 1.3 billion euros to our partner financial institutions over the past 10 years, and has benefited in terms of direct financing more than 120,000 women, small and medium-sized businesses, and more than 250,000 women benefited from either financial or non-financial services, including advisory. And our experience shows that financing is important, of course, and it's often key to develop the business and so forth, but providing advisory support, technical assistance, support for developing capacities is also very important. Mentoring is also part of it, and it's also very important for business to grow and to flourish. This very significant result would not have been possible without the cooperation of our clients, and we've been working with more than 50 financial institutions taking part of this program and deploying this program with us today. And it's very, very pleased to see some of our clients and partners here on the panel and in the audience. Beyond this number, I think, of course, this program benefits to women, but it also benefits to banks because they have, they drew some benefits out of this partnership by expanding credit to pre-existing female borrowers and providing loans to first-time female borrowers. They attract clients who were not, new clients and develop their own business. And in turn, from the woman perspective, improved access to credit help them to systematically expand their operations and increase the chance of their business survival. So, dear friends and partners, we are living in a very challenging environment and the world around us changes quickly. But I think it's all the more important for an institution like us to stick to our values and stick to our commitment to support, and in particular in this area, to support women empowerment. That will continue, as I was saying, to remain at the center of our mandate because it makes economies richer, more innovative, more productive. So, as set out in our new strategic and capital framework, we will further sharpen and deepen our impact to support women in their entrepreneurial journey. And this will be done in close cooperation with our partners, our clients, across all the countries in which we work. We have very strong partners and experts here on the panel, so let's listen to them, and thank you for them to contributing to this important discussion. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much indeed, Madame René-Bassot. And we're now going to be opening up to hear the story of one particular female entrepreneur, who's Valérie Laby, who is a serial entrepreneur from Ghana. She's currently creating an ecosystem for e-mobility solutions with manufacturing affordable and connected electrical vehicles. And she's going to be talking to us about some of the barriers she's had to face and how she's overcome them. So, the floor is yours.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning, everyone. My name is Valérie Abina Konyo Labi Gundu Saptanawan, aka Mrs. Dagadu. And my name is an illustration of the winding path or journey that I'm on as a mother, a chief in my community, a wife, and someone who took the leap to co-found Wahoo Mobility, the first electric vehicle manufacturing company in Ghana, West Africa. Can I hear you say Wahoo? Thank you. I was truly honored to be asked to speak today on the topic of her capital, her future, because it's a significant moment when we're not shying away from elephants in the room. The fact that less than 3% of all global VC investment goes to women and less than 1% of that goes to Black African women is a statistical reality that I'm living day in, day out. But why, I ask, should it be twice as hard for a woman like me to raise finance as it would a man? This is something we need to understand and be deliberate about changing. So this morning, I'd like to share with you my own financing experience building Wahoo. I'll talk about the gaps that I've seen, the challenges that I've personally had to navigate, but also some of the opportunities and innovations that have emerged to help me move Wahoo forward, from a simple idea to a growing startup with Pan-African ambitions to scale. My sincere hope is that my story might offer some insight that would lead to concrete actions to dismantle the barriers that too often prevent capable, visionary women around the world from accessing the right investments at the right time from the right people. With hindsight, my fundraising journey to date can be broken into 3 sections. The first section, funding to validate my vision. Can I hear you say funding to validate my vision? The second part of my journey has been raising equity for growth. Can I hear you say raising equity for growth? And the third part of my journey has been factoring future revenues for scale. Can I hear you say factoring future revenues for scale? Okay, you're trying. Thank you. So our vision at Wahoo has been to bridge Africa's connectivity gap through the power of electric vehicle solutions. And it really started with a self-funding idea of just converting bicycles to electric bikes to see if we could get more productive vehicles in agriculture value chains. I quickly got an early product market fit, but this led to an urgent need for pre-seed investment to build more robust prototypes to get them in the hands of riders to develop sustainable commercial models. But funding my first $100,000 to validate my vision was met with a rapid succession of sobering reality checks. The first shockwave came with the fundamental lack of belief of my vision. I had never really considered that an e-bike would have fallen under the automotive umbrella. But that was until I pitched to an early investor, and his response, delivered with a dismissive certainty, was disheartening. He stated that in his knowledge, no woman anywhere in the world had successfully built and scaled an automotive company. The implication was clear. He suggested that my ambition was misplaced, perhaps even delusional, and that because of the capex intensiveness of the industry that I was going into, I should stick to something simpler. And this was probably accelerated in terms of his thought process, was the fact that I was heavily pregnant at the time and trying to fundraise my first round. But undeterred, I turned to traditional finance institutions. I went to my banks. But the banks told me that I wasn't bankable. I lacked prior track record scaling an e-bike business, and their policy was not to fund pipe dreams. In fact, to even be considered for a loan of $100,000 to do prototyping, I needed to find cash collateral of $120,000, and I was being offered an interest rate of 36%. So essentially, the risk was on me, and the money was still out of reach. So I looked to a vital lifeline for many African entrepreneurs and businesses in our economy, friends and family in the diaspora. It is a well-known fact that some sources say up to 20% of all money flowing into Africa originates from the diaspora. However, there is a fascinating social dichotomy emerging when you discuss investments for financial return with the diaspora. As a woman entrepreneur, I soon discovered that I would have a higher likely chance of borrowing from my network to fund a wedding, a joyous occasion with no expectation of financial return, than I would securing the same amount as seed capital for my business. This is a phenomenon that is changing with a new generation of Afropolitan youth who are looking for investment opportunities, but it is something that I think is a huge opportunity that could be harnessed further. After 12 months of knocking doors, I finally managed to secure $100,000 through a grant. Can I get a wahoo? Wahoo was barely 2 years old, and it presented a significant hurdle because we didn't actually meet any eligibility criteria. We were too young a business. So we navigated this hurdle by forming a consortium with a supportive incubator. We leveraged their profile to access the finance, and they came in essentially as the project manager of the grant. While this consortium proved effective, it also highlighted some systematic barriers inherent in innovation and gender grant structures. More often, the amounts of capital are insufficient to scale real businesses. They can be seen as token investments. And as women entrepreneurs, we need to make sure that people are investing in us not to tick a box, but are investing in us because they respect us and see us as valuable partners for business. The second stage of my investment journey was around raising equity. And the best investors are those who bring more than money to the table. They bring experience, networks, and mentorship. So I had to go out in the world to find people who understood automotive. So I ended up restructuring my company and starting a holding company in Germany and crowding in German investors into my business because they're in those markets, many of them had experience in automotive investments. Even though I managed to close my round, along this journey, I learned a number of things. That in the equity space, there needs to be some gender safeguarding because I'm consistently meeting women who have closed investment deals in foreign jurisdictions who didn't have the right legal support. They also didn't manage to defend or negotiate well to maintain ownership of their businesses. And then finally, there aren't many women investing in other women, and that needs to change. So fortunately for me, on my journey raising equity, my lead investor is a women and climate-led fund. And it's made a huge difference in my journey, in how I've structured my board, but also in terms of the insights and how I raise my next rounds. Finally, I wanted to share one of the big opportunities for us as we're now in a stage of raising capital for growth. And in my own experience, the most valuable funding comes from a business's own revenue. But in our markets, being able to even close deals to bring revenue into the market is difficult. So one of the innovative opportunities that we've seen has been how we've leveraged data in our business to actually create a digital footprint that for us at Wahoo has enabled us to close a compliance market deal, where we're actually selling carbon credits essentially through our Ghanaian government to the Swiss government. And we've managed to factor that finance into the business as a way of getting long-term, non-dilutive finance into the company for growth. And I think factoring is a huge tool, particularly in emerging markets, that could support actually commercialize businesses, not just for women entrepreneurs, but entrepreneurs in general. To close, my journey has been probably one of the most exciting adventures that I've ever been on. Like mentioned earlier, the evidence is compelling. Investing in women isn't merely a matter of social responsibility. It is a strategic imperative for growth. We must dismantle obstacles that prevent women from accessing resources they require to flourish. In this pursuit, we must safeguard women's cap tables, ensure that they retain equitable ownership. We must move beyond tokenism and looking to invest to fulfill quotas. We need to make sure that we're providing enough capital for genuine growth and co-creating investments that are mutually beneficial. And finally, let us collaborate as investors, policymakers, and entrepreneurs to ensure that we forge a future where the theme is not just her capital, her future, but it is a lived reality. The moment for transformation is at hand. Let's seize it. Can I get a Wahoo? Thank you.
Well, thank you very much indeed, Valerie, for that brilliant presentation, which was both a very honest description of the challenges and an inspiring description of the potential. So I'm going to turn to the panel now for some brief comments. I'm going to urge you all to speak for no more than 1 minute in your answers, 1 minute, because we are running late, I'm afraid. So please be very quick. But I'd like to start with you, please, Rania Al-Mashat, Her Excellency, and ask, why does this matter for the Egyptian economy? Why do you care about women entrepreneurs?
Well, thank you very much. And just listening to our sister from Africa shows how strong the ecosystem is. Women's participation in any economy is macro-critical. That is a headline that has been used in all our work with different institutions. If we have parity, our GDP grows by 34%, so that's not just beneficial for women, and it just reflects the
34%.
34%, and it reflects the excellent title for this panel, Her Capital, Our Future. So it means if we invest in women, whether it's through financial inclusion, startups, etc., all of us benefit, and really our future grows. Just I know that we're short in time, but let me say that you know, the access to information, the access to the different programs and the types of financing that are available for entrepreneurs, particularly women, for us was very important to put in one place, in a platform where they can access technical assistance to be able to you know, put up with a feasibility study, what are the types of grants that are existing so that you can de-risk the access to capital. Also, the partnerships we have with EBRD and other institutions have been fundamental. Our central bank has signed you know, what Odile was mentioning, the Wi-Fi, and therefore all of these are important aspects to push a very important element within the GDP in any economy. We cannot miss the opportunity of looking at the different small and medium enterprises and entrepreneurs and how they are able to push GDP. I will maybe end by one point. There was a very important analytical work done by the World Bank called the middle income trap. If any country wants to move forward, especially middle-income countries, the only way is through innovation and entrepreneurship. And this is why supporting that from a policy perspective becomes extremely fundamental. And I'll just leave everybody with one thought. Examples such as what we heard today is moving from policy to practice, and this is what all of us need to be able to move our GDPs forward and our growth forward.
Right. Well, thank you very much indeed. Mr. Grigorian, I'd like to ask you, we just heard from Valerie the challenges she faced in getting a bank loan. Are you able to address that, and why would you care for female entrepreneurs?
Actually, it's in every country, developing, everywhere in the world, actually, women have problems of getting finance, and that's access to finance, and that's mostly connected with the biases that we have usually. I personally, I didn't know that there are certain data that prove that women entrepreneurs, they are less risky than men, actually. Unless I read some information from the IFC reports, where they showed that actually there is a 50% higher chance of male entrepreneurs defaulting than women. I didn't know this, and there was no data until we started a program with the EBRD in 2020, and then we started to track the data, and it showed actually that in our own, at our bank, the data shows that male entrepreneurs' default rate was about 2.2%, while women was 1.4%.
So women are a better bet.
Yes. And from the other hand, and this was, there are certain reports that show this is the case in every country, US, UK, Japan, Germany, Armenia, developing economies, where the perception about the women entrepreneurs is more from the investor side, is that they are riskier without even going into the data, into the details. And there's another problem for women is, which is, I think, cultural. Usually in conventional banking, in traditional banking, we require collateral, hard collateral usually. And women usually don't own that many hard collateral like the men. They own fewer, which is another problem. But in reality, when you go into the business details, yeah, you see that women-run businesses are much more successful. There are data published by the IFC, and there was a Goldman Sachs initiative, 10,000 women.
Yes.
Yeah. And when you look at the data of this initiative, it shows amazing information. You know, within 18 months, women entrepreneurs, they managed to grow their businesses significantly, more than 60%, 69% even of the participants. And out of those people, more than 60%, they increased jobs in their businesses, which is significant if you compare it with the male businessmen. It's very different. So we are not capitalizing on this. And another problem, maybe impediment for women, is the relationship.
Right.
Usually, what we have in banks, the relationship managers are male, mostly. And it's very difficult, and it's a cultural issue, again, to set up certain types of relationship with women businesses to support them, to empower them for getting finance. What we did, for example, at our bank, we changed the relationship managers. We have women relationship managers.
Right.
And after the initiative with the EBRD, actually, we did this, and this changed a lot. And now
Right.
the number of women entrepreneurs is increasing significantly. We don't have much time. I would dig into the details, but maybe this
Well, that's
three issues.
That's fantastic. So we've heard about the tremendous growth potential. We've heard about the fact that women are less risky, but there are all kinds of traditional cultural impediments to actually getting the money to them. But of course, one of the things we do need is more data about what's going on. And we just heard these great figures cited by Mr. Grigorian. Can you tell us, Governor Radovic, what you're doing to try and improve data collection or more insight into what's actually happening with women?
Before telling you about what we're doing as a central bank, which is the front runner in the region, and I should say on initiative on gender inclusion, probably on the European continent, I would like to tell you that both arguments that we heard from Rania and from Mr. Dragoyan, I've lived through that in my previous position, which was the head of the National Development Bank. And I have to tell you that representing a European country which is the next EU member state, closing its accession negotiations now in 26, I can tell you that in the southern part of Europe, between Croatia, Greece, Italy, and Austria and Hungary, you have several countries where access to finance boils down to below 10% of entire business loans, whereas female businesses are ranging between 25 to 30% of businesses. And again, as mentioned, collateral is a significant challenge because in most of these societies, and I'm not talking about Southeastern Europe only, I'm talking about a number of also European countries where customary law takes precedence over laws which are actually there on paper. So essentially, in families where there are multiple daughters, the son is the one who normally inherits. And today, as a consequence, in my country, you have 52% of population being female, 60% of university graduates being female, whereas only 8% of real estate is owned by women. So this is quite a significant impediment, and this is quite a strong obstacle. And you know, banks are dealing with small tickets, with absence of collateral, and then again, there's another factor. I mean, again, culture to a certain degree, but also ingrained in female minds to a certain degree. Also, this risk-averse position and preference for, given the traditional roles, to go for something safer. So there are quite a few challenges, and I think that we need to work together. And my experience has been, given that I worked very closely with the World Bank, with the European Investment Bank, with the European Bank for Reconstruction and Development, I have to say that this is the leading multilateral development bank, and I can only say chapeau to Barbara Rambosek for actually putting a very high threshold and doing incredible work over these 4 years. Right. And through the work with EBRD, we've done quite a lot. So currently, as a central bank, we lead on We Finance initiative, We Finance Code, and we've actually developed and produced the first country which is part of this program, which is global, co-sponsored by the EBRD, but also by the OECD and the IMF and the World Bank. We've developed gender disaggregated data for all sectors, and I've actually started, we currently have reporting standards which require banks to report on loans extended to female businesses also. And we are actually working with the European Commission and with the European Banking Authority and trying to stimulate that actually all these requirements are embedded in supervisory frameworks. And this is very relevant because otherwise not much comes on voluntary basis. And another thing is that the grants which are available usually are not absorbed because of this lack of absorption capacity. So we're doing quite a lot on financial inclusion and financial literacy. Right. And most recently, we've introduced 2 projects. One project is developing a regulatory sandbox and improving digital access to finance. And the second project is involving a project of robotics in all elementary schools for digital literacy, which is the way that mothers normally benefit the most. Right. And this is having significant effects.
Fantastic. Well, thank you. Well, that's absolutely fascinating. We do have some data and infographics perhaps we can put up behind us as we talk. And Barbara, we're behind time, so I'd ask you to be literally 30 seconds. What is the EBRD doing on this?
You need to give us
Maybe 1 minute.
Now, that's the challenge of today, isn't it?
Look at the data.
Yeah, exactly. Look at the data. It's a 30-second challenge. So basically, as EBRD, we see ourselves as the catalyst. We see ourselves as one of the key factors in helping to move the market. And we move the market by engaging with our partner financial institutions in making that business case, in showing why investing in women makes business sense. You know, all the various different things that we've heard before. We then build the capacity of our partner banks to understand that business case. That goes from the data to capacity building to structuring products and services. We provide the finance that goes with that. We provide risk cover, because it's actually very important if you go with a new product into a market, you need that risk cushion to really see how things are going and to adapt over time. And then we actually work with the women entrepreneurs themselves to build their capacity and their ability to scale their business and to access finance. So we look at all aspects of the market. And then underlying all of that, and that's where the policy component comes in, we actually work with our policy partners, with regulators, with central banks, in order to shape an ecosystem that actually supports women entrepreneurs and that really helps for that business case to permeate how the financial system works. So that's my 30-second pitch in terms of what EBRD does. But I'm happy to come back for more.
Well, we'll hear more about it later, but I'd say it's a very full program. But that's really helpful. I'd like to ask for the next infographic to be put up, please. And we're going to hear now from Celine Oz, who's going to give us a 5-minute case study of what they've been doing to try and provide more financing for women entrepreneurs in Turkey.
Thank you, Gillian. Good morning, everyone. It's a privilege to be here and to contribute Garanti BBVA's experience as a case study in addressing the gender gap financing. Garanti BBVA is the second largest private bank in Turkey. We began this journey 18 years ago, making a conscious and strategic decision to support women entrepreneurs. At that time, women represent 50% of the population, but only 5% of entrepreneurs. Today, that percentage has increased 18. Through in-depth analysis and research, we learned something very important. Women in Turkey did not see banks as partners. They struggled to access credit, lacked confidence in navigating financial systems, and a few role models to inspire them. We knew we had to act, not just commercially, but responsibly. That's why we built Garanti BBVA Women Entrepreneurs Program, the first private sector initiative of its kind in Turkey. We built our model around real-life barriers that women entrepreneurs face. The first one is access to finance. We developed tailored loan products with more flexible terms and guarantees. The second one is access to knowledge. We delivered financial literacy, mentoring, business skill training through Women Entrepreneurs Academy. The third one is the encouragement and access to role models. We launched National Award Program with Kagidar, Turkish Women Entrepreneurs Association, and now reaching over 38,000 applicants around Turkey. And the last one is access to market. As the economy evolved, we added local market linkages, digital platforms, and export opportunities. This holistic four-pillar model is embedded in our SME banking strategy. And today, we are proud to see that women-owned businesses make up 30% of our SME client base. Lending to women entrepreneurs has reached $1 billion, which is nearly 9% of our SME exposure. And our NPL ratio for women clients is remarkably low, confirming what the data shows. Women are strong, reliable borrowers. Our collaboration with EBRD has been a key catalyst in scaling this impact. In 2012, EBRD provided $60 million credit line to Garanti BBVA, entirely dedicated to women-owned SMEs. And it was the first program in EBRD's history to be solely focused on women-owned SMEs. In 2016, under Turkish Women Business Program, EBRD provided 50 million euro to further expand financing for women-led businesses. Our Women Entrepreneurs Academy, started by EBRD's technical assistance, has reached 6,000 women entrepreneurs since 2012. This was not only a financial milestone, but it was a message to the market. Investing in women entrepreneurs is not CSR. It is smart banking. The financing gap of 1.9 trillion is overwhelming. What we have seen as Garanti BBVA is that the real gap isn't in women's ability to succeed. It is in how well the financial system understood their needs. Too often, products and processes are designed with only one type of entrepreneur in mind. But women do not need special treatment. They need a banking approach that sees them, hears them, and meets them where they are. When we build that kind of relationship, the results speak for themselves. As Garanti BBVA, we have learned when you empower women entrepreneurs with tools, trust, and platforms, they do not just build businesses, they build inclusive economies. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much indeed for that very interesting and inspiring example of practical action on the ground. I'd like to turn to you, Your Excellency, and ask, in terms of Egypt, what do you see as being the biggest impediments for getting finance to women entrepreneurs?
No, I think it's a combination of many of the elements that were mentioned. It's, as the governor mentioned, taking the bet by women to go and take risk with respect to the financing, an information gap in many instances where women do not know that there are these opportunities, and particularly programs that are dedicated to them. And the third point is also the ability to maybe partner with more than one company. In many instances, banks, when they lend, they want to also see a pipeline. And therefore, the work that we're doing with different institutions to create such pipelines, the training of those in the banking sector to also look at the smaller tickets or the tickets that are I don't want to say more risky, but ones that provide more returns. So it's a combination of many factors. There's not one factor. And this creates a very extensive list of policy actions that we work on when we are discussing with the partners such as EBRD or the World Bank or many of the bilateral agencies that want to push such funding. And I want to say that, as was mentioned, it's not just a benefit for the recipient, it's also smart investment from the banking sector. We did not speak about the green investments, but there's an element of gender and green intersection which is taking place in all countries of operation of EBRD and in many of the countries in Africa. And therefore, when we look at climate change and say that women are the ones that are disproportionately affected, they're the ones that also have the solutions. And many of the brilliant ideas of dealing with climate change come from women entrepreneurs. And therefore, I think it's just about information, training on both sides, and that's how design of dedicated programs take these into account.
Right, well, thank you. Barbara, I'm going to come back to you in a moment. I'm going to turn first to Mr. Gregorian and ask you, you mentioned earlier that issues around collateral and the problem culturally of having a male loan officer dealing with a female entrepreneur are big impediments. What are you doing to try and get over that?
We changed the relationship managers.
Right, that sounds like a very practical solution.
Actually, it's not only the male relationship managers or loan officers, it's also business processes, the way they are set up. If you look any bank in the world, the conventional banks, traditional banks, they have certain types of business processes and working at certain times, like 9 to 5 p.m. for loan officers or 9 to 6 p.m. for loan officers. And when I just came in, I saw a new term, for me at least, mompreneur. And many women, and we saw Ghanaian case, they're mompreneurs. They don't have time to go to bank during the day. They have a lot of responsibilities, family responsibilities, issues, and that's the reality. What we are doing is we are transforming business processes at the bank, digitalizing everything to make accessible the business mobile application, for example, which is very, very easy to use. And women entrepreneurs anywhere in Armenia, for example, they can just, with a couple of clicks, apply for a loan. And this is something that has to be changed. To make, if the women are not able to go to the bank has to be able to go to the woman, to women.
Yes.
This is the approach that we are taking on. And as well as the way, there are certain cases that people try to convince that loans to women, we had this debate even with the EBRD, have to have better terms and conditions. This is the worst thing that one can think about. If we try to think this in these terms, we are creating another big gap for men and women around businesses. So it has to be a parity, for the first. And if you set up the parity, you set up the business processes properly, and you take into account the cultural issues. So the cultural issue is the biggest impediment, I think, and we are trying to overcome this through involving more female officers and setting up proper business processes.
Right. Well, that sounds fascinating. Obviously, the internet does create tremendous opportunities in some ways, but I could also see that Governor Radovic was putting a couple of faces there. So tell us, as a financial regulator, how does this sound, and what can you, as a central bank regulator, actually do to help?
It sounds slightly unacceptable. First of all, on a number of projects that we are undertaking as a central bank, and that I was undertaking first as the CEO of the National Development Bank, which is the fourth largest financial institution in the country, I continued, and now we have a number of projects, and it's not about involving more women and women dealing with women, and it's not about going home to mom entrepreneurs. It's about completely different concepts. It's about engaging men. In my national coalition, We Finance Code, it is the president himself. I'm the national leader, but it is the president himself that is the champion. It is the Deputy Prime Minister and Minister for Economic Development that is my champion, and my third champion is my largest bank. We're leading by example. As a central bank, I'm making an effort, but I'm working now in a different direction to establish full parity, because I have 75% of women on board, and I have 60% of women in middle management in the central bank. In the banking community, it's completely opposite, but since I took over in 2023 as a central bank governor and introduced ESG reporting standards, now from 5% of women in boards, now we've reached 35%, and my banks have less than 6 months to reach a threshold of 40%. And this is what makes a change. If you have role models, if you have parity and inclusion in positions of decision-making, if you have the strategy, and if you don't assign a position of a mother or, somebody who carries responsibilities related to household to women, if you actually educate and raise awareness that this is a joint responsibility, if, as a central bank governor, I encourage all my male staff to take parental leave. And if I encourage my banks to do the same, and if they report back to me, this is the direction in which we are heading in order to make meaningful impact and in order to make a change. And this is actually yielding results. So I think we should actually leave the stereotypes behind and leave the old concepts behind, and focus on having strategies which are actually promoting inclusion and parity. And I have to say that there is one project, and I know that we are limited to 2 minutes of time, but I really am going to exceed now. I remember in 2022, November 2022, when the EU directive on gender balance was introduced, was adopted in the European Parliament. I remember submitting amendments to the government and Parliament, together with the fantastic chair of the National Parliamentary Gender Committee. And these amendments meant 30% of women, 33% of women in executive positions, and 40% of women on boards. And we introduced actually also another condition that not a single business can be registered in the National Business Registry, which needs to be renewed on a yearly basis if it's not compliant. And I came to the EBRD because my Prime Minister and Minister of Economic Development and Finance at the time thought that I was actually introducing business barriers and that there are no women who can do that. And actually it was phrased very vocally, we don't have these women, so I came to the EBRD, I said, let's establish a concept of women on boards, let's pioneer this, and now we're seeing the second generation together, the Central Bank of Montenegro, the EBRD, and the Frankfurt School of Management, and we're trying to pilot this project and make it present in the region. And this is the way to change things. And as a regulator, I already said, we're changing the supervisory framework, we introduced the ESG reporting standards, all the banks are scrutinized and held accountable for policies, remuneration policies in terms of eliminating gender gap in terms of pay gap, and I believe that this is the only way forward, and I'm very happy that I have a very supportive president and very supportive government now compared to 2022, and that things are going in the right direction.
Well, fascinating. Thank you. By the way, are you the first female governor of the central bank?
I'm the first woman in position of power in Montenegro, never female president, prime minister, minister of finance, minister of economic development, so I'm the first female governor, and back in 2016, I was the first female vice governor, first woman to ever integrate the central bank at senior level. So I'm quite privileged to have this chance to lead and to lead by example. Thank you.
Well, fantastic. Well, both you and Dr. Al-Mashat are certainly providing powerful demonstration effect of what can change, and hopefully inspiring lots of young women in your own countries to basically go forward and challenge you in the future as well, or compete with you. But Barbara, we've heard a lot about what the EBRD is doing. Perhaps we can put up another slide, the last infographic slide. Can you talk to us a bit about what exactly the EBRD is doing in terms of trying to level some of these gender gaps in terms of financing?
Absolutely. So when we look at this business case that I mentioned that we've heard time and again, the way we engage with our clients and the way that we try to move the market is by looking at women entrepreneurs as a market segment, basically. So it is about fairness and it is about justice, but if you want to move the market, you have to engage with the market on the terms of the market. And that is market segmentation. So if you want to tap into a very profitable market segment, as we've heard, you need to know how to do it. You need to understand who is in that market segment. What are the particular characteristics? What are the pros? What are the cons? So women tend to take out smaller loans. They tend to be more risk averse. They tend to be in sometimes less profitable sectors, but they repay more reliably. The NPL ratios are much lower. They value relationship banking, and they keep coming back. So there is a certain business proposition, and if we work with our clients to understand and to shape their products and services to tap into that market segment because it is profitable, that is how we change the market, and that's exactly what we do. So we have our Women in Business programs. We heard about those. We're actually also integrating a focus on women entrepreneurs in our green economy financing facilities. So this is about enabling women to tap into not just investing in green technology, but also understanding what kind of green technology is the best placed for their particular company, their particular business. And then we engage on the policy side. So it's shaping the entire ecosystem, but primarily it's about making that business case and getting the market to recognize that women, lending to women, working with women, supporting women entrepreneurs, supporting stories like the one we heard earlier on, is a value proposition, is a market proposition, and makes sense to invest in. And that's how I think we achieve sustainable impact.
Right. Well, that's certainly absolutely terrific in terms of, and you've got lots of support here on the panel for that. Perhaps we can put up again the third infographic again, just to show once again the amount of, it's a case study about the WIB program in Western Balkans, where 25% of the loans are being issued to new women business clients. And as we've heard earlier, that have a much lower non-performing loan rate than with men. I mean, it's quite remarkable, NPL levels. But Mr. Gregorian, can you tell us, you've spoken a bit about what you see that you can do as your bank within your culture, but how do you think the wider message can get across to international finance about this enormous, missed opportunity here?
I think the first thing we need to do to make it for everyone visible what sort of opportunities we missed is the data collection. We need to collect a lot of data, and the data is missing. Most of the banks are not collecting gender-separated data. And this is something that the regulators may impose, by the way. And it could be part of the regulatory framework in general in every market, in every country, and the central banks, most probably the supervisors, would do that. We started to collect information when we started to work with the EBRD. We didn't have the data available to, and most of the banks in Armenia don't do the data collection, separated data collection. This is the most important thing, I think, from regulators' perspective. It's the most important thing to be done first. And the second is the education, and setting up proper courses, at least, with the international financial institutions, with the local universities, to set up courses for especially women in regions, to know how to do, how to set up businesses, how to move forward. And even the simplest thing, setting up a business, might be a big problem. Knowledge of how to set up a business might be a big impediment for women to get into the business world or to have access to finance. So education and data collection, those are two critical things, I think.
So education, information. Governor Radovic, what would be your message to other international policymakers? You gave a very rousing description of what you've done inside Montenegro, but what would you be telling other central bank governors in other countries?
Well, actually, we have a very closely internet community of, it's only 186 of us in the world, and we have very, especially, let's say, across Europe, very regular coordination and communication. And I have to say that in my region, well, there are already some central banks that are on board that are following up and developing similar initiative to the Central Bank of Montenegro. Nominally, central banks that are run by women, and this is the Central Bank of North Macedonia, Central Bank of Bosnia and Herzegovina. And essentially, they introduced what we did. They're introducing what we did, that there is compulsory reporting to the credit registry, where you need to have, and you already have disaggregated data across all loans and across every market segment. And what would be relevant and what would be important is actually for coordination to take place at a more extensive level between the in our case, but also in case of many that are EBRD clients, is the European Commission, IFIs, and central banks, and clearly supervisors where they're not embodied in the concept of the central bank, to make sure that there are KPIs which are set, that there are reports which are issued, and that monitoring takes place regularly, so that we can actually make sure that we have both supervisory standards, but also raising public awareness and making sure that eternal discussion on increasing access to finance for women-led businesses is not left there.
Right, well, thank you. Well, that's very practical, sensible ideas. Dr. Al-Mashat, any last thoughts on what you plan to do inside Egypt to pick up this challenge?
Accelerating what we're doing. Be faster. I think the world is changing very dramatically, and there are dividends of reforming fast so that we can benefit from everything that we heard here. The other thing is also the demonstration effect. I think, as the governor mentioned, we need to show more successful examples to open up the appetite for the lenders and the borrowers. And I think we are always very busy trying to push forward, that we don't stand for a minute and say, okay, these are the examples which have been successful and they can be replicated and scaled and so forth. So I would say accelerating reforms, pushing with the programs we have, and also creating demonstration effects more vividly and clearly.
Gillian, there's only one thing. I'm sorry, I wanted to highlight another thing, conditionality. Funds and reform appraisals cannot be approved without inclusion as a factor.
Right. Right. Well, that's another very great, very practical point. It's been a fascinating discussion. I mean, I take away 3 or 4 key points. One is that there is a huge gender financing gap, which we often ignore because the data is not there. But when we see the data, it's shocking. Secondly, it's doubly shocking because not only do women default at a much lower rate, but there's so much evidence that when we do get female entrepreneurship, we get tremendous amounts of growth. I mean, just in Egypt, as you said, 44% potential impact on GDP in terms of growth. Thirdly, there are a lot of very practical steps that can be taken. We've heard about them, both what the EBRD is doing very commendably in terms of supporting this, in terms of what banks are doing, and policymakers and governments. And there's a lot of stuff that can be done. And the fourth point I'll make is that we're having this discussion at a time when there is a tremendous backlash against many DEI, EDI initiatives. And some people would say that talking about female financing is a bit too woke. Well, what we've heard very clearly here is that actually it's about good economics, not politics. And let's take the politics out of it and recognize this really is about economic development and economics above all else. So on that note, I'd like to say a huge thank you to everyone for taking part, both to Dr. Al-Mashat and Governor Radovic, because they're not only got amazing stories to tell, they have enormous demonstration effect. I'd like to say a huge thank you to Mr. Grigorian, because we need men to be involved in this battle. And I really I mean that very strongly, and I appreciate the fact you're here and what you're doing, and also to Barbara for everything that the EBRD is doing to frame this. So thank you all very much indeed. If any of you do ever want to come up to Cambridge and talk about entrepreneurship to our students, we have passionate enthusiasm for this up in Cambridge. But in the meantime, I'd just like to commend the EBRD and all of you and say thank you for a fascinating panel.
And thank you.
Thank you.